You're listening to 17 Carat K-Pop, the podcast that's a little bit of everything with a K-pop twist. From pop culture critiques to the history of K-pop to interviews with people in the K-pop industry and K-pop artists themselves, to concert and album reviews, to a deep dive into the discographies of different K-pop artists, to K-pop news updates, to stories about the music industry more broadly. This show tries to cover everything about K-pop and K-pop as it applies to the larger music and concert scenes. Visit 17caratkpop.weebly.com for more information about the show. That's 17caratkpop.weebly.com. Today's podcast recommendation is just extra relevant once again, so I have to recommend it once again. It's called Undistracted. It stars Brittany Packnett-Cunningham, who is an activist, educator, and popular TV commentator. She's also a trusted voice for millions of people interested in social justice. Brittany aims her focus on the most pressing issues of the day through the lens of intersectional feminism. From the latest headlines to deep dives with today's most fascinating changemakers, Undistracted is your weekly guide to the revolution. She has a few of the latest episodes that are a bit on the shorter side, so if you like podcast episodes that are less than an hour, check them out. Just reflecting on the current state of America and what we can do to build a better America going forward. Hello everyone, and welcome back to 17 Carat K-Pop. Today, a 17 updates dedicated episode of the show because there's been a lot going on with them lately, as well as starting a new thing I'm going to start doing for 17 dedicated episodes, which I will get into after some quick news updates about them. What's been happening since our last 17 dedicated episodes / what's been happening since the show went on its winter break. 17 made Christmas better, and they had a Going 17 show live stream that lasted 12 hours on Christmas Eve. They also released the 24-hour choreography video. That's the title of the song, not the length of the choreography. They performed at the 2020 Fact Music Awards. They performed Kidult and Falling Flower and Fearless. And they just performed a few nights ago on The Late Late Show for their debut performance there. They were going to perform also at the KBS Song Festival, and that led to some weird confusion and frustration because the 17 members all had to get tested for coronavirus, and because they had possibly run into direct contact with someone who tested positive due to their hair and makeup staffs being crossing paths with each other, and it's a long story, but the members had to get tested, and SQ didn't get his results back when the others did. They said it was too hard to tell, and I don't really know what that means, but his test results were inconclusive, so the other members were cleared but not him, and then there was confusion about what to do, because it sounds like some people thought that KBS, the studio hosting the Song Festival, was still putting them on the lineup, saying, no time to wait for SQ's results, I'm sure he's fine, let's just get them to record this. Whereas the actual award show itself, not KBS, the broadcast network, but the show itself had taken them off of the set list, saying if they can't get clear, they're not going to perform it. So that dispute seems to have led to conflicting messages about, are they still on the lineup? Do they perform? Do they because it was all pre-recorded, but still they hadn't even recorded it yet, and there was questions as to, would we just hold off recording then and wait till SQ's results are in, or are they not even on the lineup anymore? What's happening? And so the members spent like 4 hours at the studio ready to pre-record their appearance, and then it got cut. So it was quite a big, frustrating day for Carats. SQ did test negative eventually, but it was quite the issue. But luckily, they're all safe, all tested negative. Moving on to a newly recurring segment I'm going to have on the 17 Talk episodes, I want to really further dive into and recap the 17 docuseries Hit the Road, because I did review it for the show, but the segment was a bit short, and I just feel like there's so much more there that we should take time to appreciate and think about that really shows a lot and delivers insights into the life of 17 and Carats. So I figured episode by episode we should recap Hit the Road and what it says about 17 as a band. So today's recap is, of course, for episode 1, which was Woozy's episode. This one featured some really exciting clips, like of the Ode to You World Tour intro, where they all entered the stage from different places with their, not hoods, but like these big leather pieces, these pop collar type of things on their coats, covering their mouths. Anyway, so they had these half-concealed faces and dramatic cape-like outfits, and they all came from different parts of the arenas they performed at. It was a very cool, exciting intro when they walked on stage at different places. You didn't know where to look first. It was very cool and mysterious of an intro. If you saw the show live, that you got to then relive that through this docuseries episode where you got to see their intro set to the song Getting Closer in the opening number and shots of that. Other scenes in this episode included them in the dance practice studios for the tour rehearsals, Woozi just in the crowd, the empty crowd, while they were rehearsing. You got to look inside Woozi's recording studio as he worked on some music with Bumzu, a longtime collaborator of his. 17 is seen winning Album of the Year and giving their acceptance speech. Woozi commented about how it felt so rewarding, like all of their hard work paid off. And that is really something to think about because it truly is their hard work paying off. And not that other artists don't work hard, but it's just worth noting and appreciating how 17 goes the extra mile to add personal touches and constantly rework and edit their own music. They're so hands-on with it. And so when they get an award, it's extra meaningful because it's truly their work that they're getting awarded for and recognized for. Woozi also talked about while he was in the recording studio how people wonder how what he does is so easy. Or so hard, and he insists it was so easy. Like, it's just what he does. He makes music, and people think making those catchy songs is so hard, and you watch him in the studio at work. And I was reminded of Yoongi, what he's been saying about making BTS's latest album, and how he wrote some of those songs in, 30-minute sessions. And to me, that's so amazing, how you can find the words to articulate an experience and set it to music within a half hour. That is just so impressive, and so that is something that I've been thinking a lot about lately, and how these people just shrug it off like it's just how they do things and how they creatively express themselves, but I would be struggling all day to come up with the right words for something, so I'm just so impressed with that. Bumzu was interviewed for this episode, and he talked about how he always saw great potential in Woozi and knew that he should just be left alone to do his thing because his instincts are just right, and so don't push him too much and box him into a certain mindset because he's already doing things great by being authentic, and he just has the right instincts. Bumzu said he was 17's vocal coach back during their trainee days and get-go before the debut of the group even, that Woozi was just so talented and had so much potential and so much in his future. He said his goal ultimately as a vocal coach has always been to just let them enjoy music and let them be themselves when they work on it, which Woozi definitely does, but he also does it while staying quite humble, saying that each member has their own unique strengths they add to the group, and so he just thinks producing is just his strength, mixing the instrumentals and whatnot, and so he just kind of shrugs off a lot of compliments about this. During the dance practice studio scene where they're rehearsing there, you see a whole crew that is working with them. Vocal coaches or sound technicians or just a lot of people that are putting the concert together, and they are rehearsing in Osaka where they're about to have a big show. Woozi comments about how no matter where they are in the world performing, 17 likes to what he calls maintain the system. So instead of them having their own pre-show rituals and ways of practicing and preparing for a show, they try to meet the system of the location. So instead of them just doing what they do, they intentionally try to work with the system in place in Osaka, for example. They just try to meet these sound techs and the choreographers, etc., where they're at. Meet them where they're at and not expect them to conform to 17's ideas. It's just such a refreshing thing to say compared to some artists who can be quite the divas and, have their long riders, the list of things they want in their dressing room, whereas 17 is just like, what do you want from us? And that is what they try to work with. Woozi said some really interesting quotes that stuck with me about how he actually gets more nervous. He got more nervous the days when 17 performed to an audience of 30 people than he does now with thousands of people. And that is really worth thinking about for a minute because it's probably true that you get a little more nervous and jittery when you're talking to or presenting in front of people you know well or a classroom of your peers as opposed to a bunch of anonymous faces maybe that's part of it. Or maybe it's just the feeling that so much is riding on it. Whereas when you're performing in front of so many thousands of people, you already feel validated. Like, not everyone can hate this performance, you know what I mean? But when you're in a room of 30 people, you can see each individual reaction and each individual look of disdain possibly. He talked about how he recognizes the responsibility that comes with the increase in crowd sizes at 17 concerts. He gets that and sees that he has that potential to reach so many more people now, which should make him more nervous. But it doesn't, and he needs to keep that in mind, though, and try to hold on to some of that nervousness. Basically, what he's saying is that he wants to stay a good influence and realize how he has this platform to reach people, and so he wants to make sure he reaches people in positive ways, even if it may be easier said than done, because he has to be more conscious and aware of how he is trying to reach people, because the initial nerves are no longer there, but that doesn't mean your intent to affect people's lives should slip away with that emotion. That you need to keep those emotions and excitement and channel those into putting on a good show still, and still feeling some of that pressure. That's positive to feel some of that pressure. It motivates you to do better and influence people better. Some key quotes from this episode I really liked. Number 1, Woozy says, quote, "Everyone must have different backgrounds and lives they carry out," referring to the fans. "So it doesn't matter really whether we make you feel happy, excited, as long as the emotions are positive for the individual." He also goes on to say, quote, "The more we get to participate in the album, the more we get to contemplate on what kind of voice we can make. I think the core message of the album comes out naturally, as it's also what we've been thinking of as the youth of this generation." Just talking about the authenticity and how 17 truly tries to speak to the youth by being themselves when they make music, which I think is part of the reason they have such global popularity, because they're just themselves and true to that. Each episode of this docuseries includes an opening message on the screen and a closing message. And for Woozy's episode, the opening message said, quote, "For you to walk comfortably." The closing message said, quote, "When my little steps pile up, they will form a firm path one day," which I absolutely love. It reminded me of that lyric in Together where they say, there are many paths before me, and the world may be going different directions, but I will still find my path someday. And just talking about paths and building those paths step by step, which is the whole theme of this newest album, Semicolon, where the 17 members talked about it's okay to take a break and figure out where your path is, and step by step, just go your own pace to get there. It's not a rush, it's not the destination, it's the journey. And that is ultimately the message of Woozy's episode, is enjoy the journey of being yourself and enjoy the awards and results when they come, but never lose sight of why you're doing what you're doing, and focus on what you're doing in the present moment and being proud of yourself for that. Those are my key takeaways from episode 1 of Hit the Road. Thank you, 17, for everything as always, and thank you to my listeners. I will see you next time for How to Stand and more content on the show next week.